latter half of the 20th century has seen an explosion in reports of unidentified flying objects. The official reaction has been silence.
Why can't people talk about it? Because the Air Force knows. That there was a crash saucer, there were alien bodies recovered, that there have been aircraft that have gone up to chase UFOs and have not come back. They know that we're dealing with the biggest story of the millennium.
In 1947, something had crashed near Roswell, New Mexico. A local farmer discovered the remains of some kind of craft made from a material he had never seen before. The story of a wrecked flying saucer soon spread. The military quickly counteracted these rumors by explaining it away as a crashed weather balloon, but it was too late. The Roswell incident had already changed the face of ufology. Former Apollo scientist Stanton Friedman has spent the last 20 years investigating the Roswell phenomenon.
In early July 1947, apparently 2 flying saucers, for whatever reason, crashed.
But how could starships travel successfully across space only to arrive here and crash?
They would certainly be expected to occasionally run into something that was totally unexpected. In New Mexico, it could have been 2 things that come to mind. One is powerful electrical storms. I've been down there, hailstones this big, lightning bolts, because of the mountains and stuff. So if you're tootling right along, you've never seen these before, and suddenly, whammo, a big lightning strike. That could cause something to go wrong.
Poor atmospheric conditions is, however, not as convincing as Friedman's other theory.
Secondly, strange thing, there was a radar beam on at White Sands Missile Range.
This was an experimental radar. You see, the military airfields had the first radar, and it had a 25-mile radius, and that had a certain amount of power. Then, after the war, when we started building radar for commercial airfields, we increased it to 50 miles. Now that took the square of the power for the 25-mile radius. When we went from 50 miles to 200-mile radius, it took a fantastic amount of power.
Now, this is out in the middle of nowhere. The beam would be on because it's vacuum tubes, not transistors. You just let it sit there. So if you got a pair of saucers going along, pilot and a wingman, and they suddenly encounter this powerful radar beam, and the 2 maybe bang off each other. One crashes over here with bodies, one crashes over there with bodies. Tough luck, guys.
There were more than a dozen alien spacecraft that came down in a 3-year period of time as a result of this. Then it was taken out of commission.
If this is correct, then it would appear that extraterrestrial technology is more fallible than ufologists had previously imagined.
So I can understand that they don't have a zero defects program that's any better than ours. After all, the shuttle blew up. 747s have crashed. Very sophisticated systems, and they're close to home.
In the late 1940s and early 50s, the United States were under increasing pressure to explain these strange objects as news of sightings multiplied dramatically. The public's fear was stoked not only by thoughts of aliens, but also by a fear that it might be Soviet technology entering their airspace at will.
We can say that the recent sightings are in no way connected with any secret development by any agency of the United States.
There was no question that the government was concerned, partly because there were a lot of sightings near highly classified areas. Hanford in Washington, nuclear weapons related. Oak Ridge in Tennessee, nuclear weapons related. New Mexico with White Sands Missile Range, Los Alamos National Lab, Sandia. These are most classified areas. The government was very concerned. This is nothing to be trifled with. The
The US government was forced to act. it set up an investigation called Project Blue Book, which it hoped would answer these perplexing questions. US Navy physicist Dr. Bruce Maccabee has studied the history of Blue Book.
The first sighting in the Project Blue Book file is from Great Britain when a fighter chased some object that was picked up off the coast of Britain and chased it for several hundred miles. Apparently the British intelligence never did figure out what it was they were chasing.
The then Prime Minister Winston Churchill wrote to the Air Ministry and demanded to know what was going on. He received a very peculiar reply which said basically that there was nothing to worry about. That was strange because some 20% of sightings were unexplained.
So what use did Project Blue Book serve? Was it just a smokescreen for other more top-secret investigations?
It wasn't until a certain incident in Yorkshire in September of 1952 that Air Force intelligence people began to get seriously interested, and they visited Air Technical Intelligence Center at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, where headquarters of Project Blue Book were, demanding to know what was going on.
I tried during my 3-year tour of duty to establish contact with an opposite number in the United States. I made repeated attempts to do that, but consistently drew a blank. I was told that since Project Blue Book closed down in 1969, there was no official interest in this subject.
So what use did Project Blue Book serve? Was it just a smokescreen for other more top-secret investigations?
I don't think it was a smokescreen. At the same time, I don't think it was a genuine investigation in that the really sensitive reports were filtered out. The subject of flying saucers was classified 2 points higher than the hydrogen bomb. That's going back to 1949, 1950.
Does it remain as highly classified today?
From what I've been able to gather from my sources, it is the most sensitive subject within the intelligence community.
But why the need for such sustained security today?
To try to piece out the government's involvement in UFOs is much more complex than you might think. We use the term government as an all-encompassing thing, but that's not how it works. Everything's compartmented. So what we have to understand here is that Blue Book was the cover organization. That's the one you heard about. That's the only one ever mentioned. And as recently as last year, an Air Force letter to a senator said Blue Book was it, and when we closed it, we got out of the business. In reality, a light in the sky means nothing. But if one goes buzzing down the runway at a strategic air command base where nuclear weapons are stored, which has happened, and we've got some records on that, that's of concern. I'm convinced that with the recovery of the wreckage and bodies in New Mexico in 1947, July, that Operation Majestic 12 was established officially on September 24th, 1947. An outstanding group of 12 people, 2 Army, 2 Navy, 2 Air Force, and that it's called the shots. It was accountable only to the President.
Presidents come and go, but the Majestic 12 endure. This is the mantra of many ufologists and conspiracy theorists alike. It is suspected that one of their operations centers is in the Nevada desert at Area 51, also known as Dreamland. And humans, it seems, aren't the only ones working there.
He's a gray alien, about 5'4", sort of a knowledgeable individual. If we wanted to put something in the place of what they had, he had to agree with it.
He told me that when he was working with the alien in ambient light, that the eyes looked black, completely black like onyx. And he said that in a subdued light, like under a panel, where there's no direct light, where he can look him in the face again, he can see an iris through that black lens and a pupil. It may be nothing more than a protective lens over the eye, because they don't have any nose to hold the glasses and no ears to put them on.
But is there any suggestion or evidence of government involvement?
The only presidents that I feel that I met at the facilities back in the 50s and 60s were Nixon and Bush. George Bush knows a certain amount of the activity. He doesn't know the whole entire scenario.
Former President George Bush, as a former director of Central Intelligence, did have wide knowledge of this phenomenon. Presidents are briefed, but exactly how much information they're given, I've no idea. I'm quite convinced it varies from president to president.
One of the US government mandarins who may have revealed more than he meant to was Admiral Bobby Ray Inman, a former director of the Defense Intelligence Agency. The revelations came during a telephone conversation with UFO researcher Bob Exler.
Do you anticipate that any of the recovered vehicles would ever become available for technological research outside of the military circles?
Again, I honestly don't know. 10 years ago, the answer would have been no.
Yeah.
Whether as time has evolved, they're beginning to become more open on it, is a possibility.
He knew from an official standpoint that these vehicles, these objects existed, that they were in military, U.S. military custody, and that there were scientific projects associated with those. I believe it is the first revelation by anyone in a high enough level capacity within the U.S. government, especially within the intelligence community, to, in effect, acknowledge that we are indeed involved, that UFOs are real, that they were developed by non-human intelligence, and that somehow or another we have acquired possession of that technology.
Inman does not say much. There is no reference, there's no mention of UFOs, spacecraft, anything like that. The conversation centers on recovered vehicles, technology, and so forth. But Admiral Inman was aware of the subject matter, and we know from his executive assistant, Tom King, that there was to be no public discussion of these matters, the matters that had been discussed between Exler and Inman, because of national secrecy laws.
We ask that you not quote him or use his name in any manner without his prior approval.
Interestingly, Admiral Inman, after spells at the DIA, the CIA, and the National Security Agency, found a place at SAIC, a company that specializes in, among other things, gravity propulsion systems for spacecraft. If we have had access to these craft, then why aren't we flying our own versions?
Some people say, well, if we got wreckage from 50 years, why aren't we flying saucers? If you gave a nuclear submarine to Christopher Columbus and say, Chris, the budget's unlimited, I need 2 more of these by the next 20 years, he couldn't have come close. A cheap digital wristwatch given to the smartest people on the planet 80 years ago, could they have built another one? Not the slightest chance.
Some reports indicate that we've actually been test flying within a limited area actual alien vehicles which have been made using alien technology.
The development of very advanced vehicles requires a number of things. One is money, one is imagination. The thing that makes many advanced research and development projects more sure to be supported, more sure of success, is to know that what you're trying to accomplish can indeed be accomplished.
The Avro car was one such leap of imagination. Built after World War II, this initially promising project was soon shelved. In Russia, flying saucer technology lives on, with this passenger version due for liftoff by the turn of the century, money permitting presumably. This design, however, appears almost medieval when compared to what observers have seen in the skies above us. Dr. Maccabee isn't alone in thinking that there's a lot of catching up to do.
Our present understanding of the universe is that if we work hard enough, we can learn more. Now maybe they know a lot more, maybe they know 10,000 years more worth of stuff than we know. But give them 10,000 years, we could catch up with them.
One of the most mystifying incidents surrounding what the American government may or may not know about UFOs occurred in 1989 and was called Cosmic Journey.
Presenting Cosmic Journey.
Cosmic Journey is a new experience in live entertainment, a new concept and a new dimension. This is something that no one should miss, and I guarantee you that millions and millions of people throughout the world will remember this for the rest of their life.
Several renowned UFO researchers were asked to contribute to this traveling show, among them Bob Exler.
The Cosmic Journey project was brought to my attention through recommendations. I was contacted by the Kenneth Feld production group in Orlando, Florida. They were working on a project
which was to be an exhibition featuring Soviet and Russian and other spacecraft. Also, they were interested in having 6,000 square feet of UFO exhibits.
So, for Exler, this appeared to confirm the truth behind rumors such as Roswell.
And of course, my background with NASA, my background with the area of robotics, and my background in UFO research were three critical areas that were of interest to them in this project.
So they got hold of Bob Exler, and the rest is history. He claims that not only was he shown photographs of alien bodies, but that he was told about alien craft and that they were actually considering. This was a general at the Pentagon who was acting as the intelligence community liaison for this Cosmic Journey project. And this general told Bob Exler that they were considering actually exhibiting an alien craft and or an alien body.
Exler then claims that the Cosmic Journey became even stranger.
It was a craft he showed me photographs of where they were planning to take a pie-shaped wedge out of the craft and put this actual vehicle on display.
But they were concerned about public perceptions in these areas.
He was taken to a secret military facility out in the Gulf of Mexico by helicopter. What he saw there amazed him.
As we got into this facility, we descended to an area that I would describe as sort of a mezzanine area looking out over a control room. This was obviously a NORAD tracking facility. There was a huge screen. It represented an area of the southeast quadrant of the United States. Then there were a series of lights that were floating along sort of like the top of this grid area. There were 5 of them in all. Were labeled, by the way, on the screen as ASCs, and I heard someone make reference to alternative spacecraft. The craft went down into this grid, into this vortex area, and then dispersed. And no one seemed to be concerned at all. One of the things that transpired over the course of that year in the early 1990s was that we were heading into somewhat of an economic recession. And this factor alone, I believe, convinced the organizers to put the project on mothballs eventually. So my tenure with the project was rather short-lived. I've not since been contacted by anyone associated with the Cosmic Journey. There have been, since the publication of the book revealing the project itself, there have been a number of plausible denials by members associated with the project, and of course categorical denials on anything related to the more intrinsic alien issues.
So, can we ever hope to know what many believe the government already knows?
There certainly seems to be an improvement in the quality of information we're getting. Whether this is intentional on the part of the ETs or better luck, I don't know. But certainly they want to be known. But they're not doing this in a totally overt manner, like landing on the White House lawn or landing on Downing Street or something like that. They're just letting it filter its way through the population. And by giving us better and better data slowly, people like myself are being provided with better data which are more convincing to other people.
Secrets can be kept. They are being kept. One way that they're being kept is the naivete of the people who think, if this was going on, I would know about it. The ego is a powerful weapon.
They're playing with us more than anything else. I don't think they are seriously intend to give us anything that's we're going to hurt ourselves with.
There are a number of areas around the world, certainly not restricted to the United States, where various projects are going on. I've even learned, I'm not saying this true, but it's what I've been told by reliable sources, that there are actual extraterrestrial bases around this planet.
Until the day the researchers find the truth, or the authorities choose to tell us, Project Blue Book remains firmly closed.